I'm here with Face, head coach of the Los Angeles Gladiators. I guess the most winning franchise this year with 2 stage titles in that regard. And generally speaking, I would say the most successful season the franchise has ever had. Didn't win the regular season, but won two tournaments, didn't make another. Third in the standings, I think, by my estimation. And one of the most successful seasons of the Gladiators yet. So are you satisfied with your results?
Not really. I think stage 3 was a pretty disappointing stage, and the only really thing that matters to me is just the end of season playoffs. Stage titles are just like good things that you collect along the way, but you're just playing for season wins.
That's an interesting subject because I think that's something that's very often echoed by other coaches that I hear, that it's basically all about the playoffs. Is it not still an interesting, artifact almost of American sports that we think this way? Because theoretically speaking, like being the most consistently good team across the entire league probably is harder than just, maybe hitting a lucky payoff patch and then just, winning it London style in season 1.
Yeah, but I think being the best in the end is worth a lot more than like every you say like playoff patch, like every stage is a playoff patch, like being the best by the end is the accumulation of like a lot of things, and like you're the team that has probably improved the most over the season to get that final win.
For sure. Now, speaking of stage 3, I was told by other teams that you guys were still monstrous in scrims, right? Like probably by the end of stage 3, people had you as a favorite had you gone into that tournament. Do you think that's fair? Were you guys doing much better like at the end?
Yeah, we were doing a lot better towards the end. I don't know if we would have won it. I probably got this like self belief in our team that like we can always win like in any situation. Yeah, we improved a lot. We just made I just made too many errors at the start of the stage.
Which errors did you make?
I think we like changed directions on how we wanted to approach the meta too many times, and then yeah, we just like I think we just changed. We like flip flopped on too many like key ideas that really wanted to like pursue instead of just going down one thing. And then we were trying midway through. We kind of like invested into Rhino and didn't try space as much. And space in the end was like I think Rhino's really skilled, but space was like he's pretty exceptional at getting the team on the same page, and that's a really valuable thing that you can do in the jungle queen meta. Was just like solely based around like macro, and yeah, how your team approaches things.
Pulling away the curtain a little bit, like on a decision like this, is scrim time then representative of the time that a player will get also in the eventual matches on weekend, or how does that work?
It varies. At the start of metas, usually we would try like to play everyone through our whole roster and try like see who's strong, and then like see. Usually you aren't sure about the metas, but as the meta goes along, you define like what you think is good, and then like that narrows down like who will play. So by the time like you come around to a match, it is reflecting the tail end of your scrim time of like who's playing the most.
For sure. Now, last time we talked about you jumping into the head coach position for the first time since, the Sydney drop S, basically. And you told me you were ready and you felt ready for the head coach position. Now, in hindsight, across the season, were you ready, or did you have to grow into that position?
Yeah, I think I was ready, but you have to grow no matter what. Like, if you stop learning, you die. In like anything at like this level of competition, you kind of just have to learn things along the way. Like, I haven't been perfect, but I've been far from perfect, but I think I've learned along the way and tried to adjust as I felt like I had to.
Which season would you say was harder? Not just for you personally, but like for the entire team. Was it season 4 or season 5?
Season 5.
Why?
Yeah. I mean, personally, like having a lot more responsibility is always more difficulty. Just the Overwatch 2 thing in general, I think, has been hard for like a lot of people, like especially the team. Like you scrim, and then like for the majority of the season, like it's just been like just the scrims, and um, that is like that always becomes a struggle for any team where you can't practice what you would like in a meaningful way. And then there's all like every team has all like a pretty significant like hardships that are like very much behind the curtains and will always remain behind the curtains, and like they're just things that I can't stress how hard every team has it. Like, but they're the things you have to deal with along the way, and they're really stressful.
For sure. What do you think changed in terms of the game changing from a coaching perspective? Is Overwatch 2 an easier or harder game to coach?
I think just the same. I don't think easier or harder. Just it's there are differences like how you should think about the game, but it's still Overwatch at its core. Yeah.
When I asked Rush that question, basically he told me like, from his point of view, Overwatch 1 in terms of, the things people did, I think what he meant was probably meta archetypes and whatever, was fairly figured out. And therefore, like when something presented itself, let's say, hero pools or a balance patch, you had go-to things that established themselves over the, competitive history of Overwatch 1. That went away with Overwatch 2. Do you feel that? Do you feel like sometimes you had to reinvent the wheel there?
I don't think you have to. Yeah, I guess you have to reinvent the wheel, but Overwatch 1 by the end of its life cycle was uh the patch cycle was like very short, and then like there weren't many changes like throughout Overwatch 1 towards the end, so like people just go through like any change, people would go, okay, we had to go back to this meta, we'll try this. And now there's new things, but at the start, I guess at the start of Overwatch 2, you can just consider it as a very big patch change, but now I think people are starting to work out like those little archetypes that they need to try each patch.
So go in as many layers as you want to with this one, but do you think Overwatch is generally a better game? Overwatch 2?
Yeah, I think Overwatch 2 is like significantly better. I think it plays better at its base level. It's just like a better game that's more appealing. But then I think also like making the game smaller, and I think main tank was always like it was a really unappealing role to play in just like ranked games. And now like that there was always just one hero in every game that always felt like they had significantly less power than anyone else in the game. And now that tank, that person, it feels like probably every time they play ranked games, they probably feel like they have a lot of control with the game. It's like a rewarding thing to play now. Whereas now you have basically every time you play ranked game, like I think most people feel like they have like a more control in the game. And that's really rewarding.
Did you have time to play it?
A little bit, but I don't really play much anymore.
For sure. So I think generally speaking, people are also very interested in how the behind the scenes stuff on the coaching staff specifically works. So one of the user questions that we got was, who does what on the coaching staff? Basically, like you of course got yourself, then Unter, then Smash. What are the general responsibilities? Who does what? And, like, how's that structured for your organization?
There's like a large degree of overlap between all of us, and I kind of like disperse it and then like collate it all and then disperse it how I would like to. But Smash is like, he's really amazing at like seeing all this detail in the game, and he has like this really high level understanding on like some metas that is probably like better than I've seen anyone. And then Anta is just like a really personal person that has Anta like gets along with everyone, and he's exceptional at like doing individual work. So each person has their own like little strengths, but in the end, like most of our coaching is just like us all talking together, and then just like at the end of the day or like at the start of the day, just we just go through everything with the team together.
What do you do in that situation?
I usually just take like everyone says their opinions, and then I kind of make sure that there is always like one direction and like lead them through. I give my opinions, and then like sometimes there's like conflict, and I have to like resolve that or like make sure that that's more seamless. I wouldn't say seamless, but as smooth as possible between the three of us.
Like on a spectrum from a top-down dedicated, or I guess from a top-down approach, who dictates the strategical the strategies that each team plays, and a completely player-led team. Where on that spectrum are the Gladiators? Are they more, are you more of an authoritarian? Are you more of a hands-off coach? What do you think generally?
I think closer to the middle. Like ideally, in my head, like I want to be the team that is like, half led by coach, half led by players. But I think like depending on like whatever's happening in game or like where you are in the week, it'll like sway. Sometimes we leave more for the players to like work things out, and like they give us their input, or sometimes we have to make more to take more direction.
For sure. Now, speaking once again a little bit more generally on the changes with Overwatch 2, which role do you think got more important through the changes?
I think tank significantly. Like, you've combined both two jobs into one, and given that person a lot of power over the game. I think DPS also just have a lot more space, so that they previously they had probably had the highest impact in the role, but I think it's just gone up a little bit more.
When I asked Rush that, he basically said like it feels like without good DPS you can't win it in Overwatch anymore, and they got more important. Do you feel that?
Yeah, I think before the two really, really good tanks could nullify like DPS, but now DPS is really strong. It's also like a case of like you envy what you
Yes. Yeah.
But yeah, for us, I think it's a little, but like, I see like the power that we have. Like every time I see Kevin like play the game, I'm like, okay, that's nice.
Yeah, for sure. What did you generally think in terms of Kev MVP nominations? Of course, Shu was also in there. How did you follow that discourse and the general opinions shared?
I very lightly followed any sort of MVP discussion. I think Kev is one. I think there are 3 MVPs, like, and then everyone else is not really in consideration. I think I would love for Shu to be in consideration, but I don't think anyone will vote for a support player, which is just, probably just, it's not fair on Shu. Shu is significant, just an incredible player. But no one of a support player, and he also missed a stage because his role just wasn't played for a stage. And then Kevin is just, Kevin to me is like him and Proper are a league of their own in DPS.
Who's the third that because you said there should be 3.
Hanbin right? Is like, he's been able to dictate a lot. Like anytime Zarya is in the meta, he can play other things, but like anytime Zarya is in the meta, he's been like this like cornerstone of his team.
What do you think he does better than other Zaryas? Because like we can feel the impact, we can see the kill feed, but like what is the thing that he does better than everyone else that puts him ahead?
He's just hyper aware. Like he doesn't do one thing. Like he's not just like endlessly aggressive. If you make a mistake, he'll peel really well for his team, or he'll be really aggressive. He'll find openings in the game to do anything, like aggressive or defensive, and then he always balances everything out really well. He'll just yeah. Sometimes you'll have like a really good dive, and then he would end up in your backline because he isn't being checked. Or sometimes you'll have a really good dive, and he would just peel for that. You can't really account for it because he balances it like intuitively really well.
Sure. Now, talking a little bit about Kevster, I mean, I think everyone sort of gets what kind of numbers this guy puts up, right? And generally the carry potential you get from that. It's almost like he's now such a stable in the league that it almost feels like normal to just have Kevster, be consistently one of the best players in the team. What do you think he brings to the table outside the server that people don't see?
It's the thing that Kevin's like really improved upon. When I first met Kevin a long time ago, he was close to like a mute player. But now, like he's for sure like one of the most vocal DPS players in the league. Like on our team, he's just a really consistent voice in like in game, that making plans, like giving us direction. Like in bad moments, he's given like the calming speech to the team, and that's like changed the result of maps. Um, yeah,
Is that
like
something he got better at this year?
significantly. This year, yeah, every year like Kevin improves. Like he's a very ambitious player. Um, I don't think he'll outwardly say this, but yeah, he's really ambitious. He's always like looking to improve like every aspect of his game.
For sure. Now, another thing that happened this season, of course, is the retirement of Patty. How did Patty communicate his desire to retire? And
Patty was struggling with some injuries, and then some external things that he was having a hard time with, and he just kind of talked to the org and like felt that he was like better suited to dealing them away from the team, and we just supported him with that, like however we needed to do it. And yeah.
Sure. Now, okay, let's lock a little bit into the playoff mindset. I guess immediately the first thing that springs to mind is we got a new hero that we haven't played previously in a competitive environment. So that's a big question mark, right? How good is Kiriko?
Kiriko is cool. It's just it's a cool, like a really interesting hero. It kind of changes the way how the game can be played. You can just TP anywhere, anyone can ask for help anytime. How you kind of expect Overwatch to be played before was like usually like there'd be one support player that couldn't move, but now you can just change wherever you want to play on the map, which is really interesting. So yeah, I think it's a really well designed hero.
What kind of play styles do you think that facilitates in teams? Do you think like if you're an observer, you should probably be very aware of what happens on the flanks, for instance?
Yeah, I think it's probably going to be hard to observe or like know what you should be watching next, but I think it's probably like most similar to any of like the Lucio Moira combinations of the past. Like that type of thing is just like even more mobile than Moira.
If I understand you correctly, what I hear is she's cool. She brings new stuff to the table, but she isn't necessarily overpowered. Is that true?
No, I think she's like been balanced really well. Um, I think things are only really overpowered when they take away diversity from any sort of meta, which could be the case. I'm not too sure. I don't think many teams. It'll either be like the playoffs will be very diverse, or it'll be more teams don't have time to work things out, so that they'll all just go down one direction. Or yeah, so I don't think she's too overpowered, but I think I could see every team playing her.
Interesting. Is there something? So I mean, from being a solo queue Andy here, feels like pretty challenging to reliably hit those headshots, right?
Yeah, I think it's really hard.
Is that true also at the pro level?
Yeah, I think it's really hard no matter what. It's definitely not like a high damage hero.
Right. I generally heard like her numbers are not that insane. Like that tells me also the healing as well. That tells me like you got to bring value somewhere else, and she's probably more effective in with the numbers that she has. Meaning, like the healing that she applies probably means that someone survives, or the damage that she does probably means that someone dies and isn't necessarily just poke. Even though I think there's some poke in there, in order to justify her existence over someone else like Bap, who just generally has like pretty high output on both healing and damage, right? Is that true? Like, is she just very effective at what she does?
Yeah, I think like across Overwatch's history, one of the most valuable things like across the game has been mobility. You can just like look at Tracer does amazing damage, but one of the things it does is it just can go anywhere on the map really, really fast and always keep moving. And Kiriko is the only support hero that has that sort of mobility. So if you're playing Kiriko at all, you're usually using it for that sort of like aspect. You're not really using it to like it doesn't heal the most, it doesn't do the most damage, but it can be anywhere.
One thing that I heard some teams echo is basically like, and this is I guess a viewer PSA, if Kiriko has ult and the other Kiriko doesn't have ult, that's probably most of the time a one team fight, right? It's a very strong ultimate.
Yeah, that's probably correct. It's probably the best ult in the game.
Oh, okay. So, okay. Interesting. Is it just as straightforward as it looks?
Probably not as straightforward, but everything is like twice as fast, and yeah, everything is just better. Your whole team can use it. It's a huge area. So yeah, I think it's if you have that all and the other team doesn't, you can usually find a way to win.
Is it an ult that needs to be comboed with other ultimates, or is it one that self-generate or helps even generate for others?
It kind of depends on the ult state of like the game, but yeah, you can combo or you just use it by itself. Yeah, it kind of just depends on what's happening in the game, other things that are happening in the game.
For sure. Now, another thing that, I mean, no forced comments here, but each year we had playoff patches. You've gone through that experience as well. How do you generally think about playoff patches, and how much does timing of those matter?
I hate playoff patches. I think it's important that the league aligns itself with the game in its live state. But it can. I think we're aligning ourselves. I don't know when this will actually align, but I think players that are playing the game should feel like they should be able to open up the league stream and be like, okay, oh, my rank game just this happened. Oh, I can watch people in the pro play. Oh, it's the same thing. They should feel like, and if that doesn't happen, it's I think really disappointing. Sometimes I think it's too hard to like set up like perfect alignment, and if that's the case, then I think it's just best to have a patch with like a decent amount of run up time, so that it reduces the amount of random things that can occur during playoffs. If you don't have enough time for all the teams to work out like their best interpretation of a meta, I think you really just get like random results, and you're not seeing like the best Overwatch that you could be, which is what playoffs should all be about. Like, showcasing the best the game can be. And if teams haven't worked things out, it's just you're just getting like random results.
I guess this leaves like the question open, and that's probably a subjective question, especially also for the viewer or for whoever who's going to evaluate that. But who's the best Overwatch team? The one that adapts the quickest, or the one that masters a meta?
Masters. Yeah. I think like the quickest team can also be a lot of factors. It could just be like some teams might have a very good tracer player, and then that tracer player is, that is the easiest thing that's aligned itself in that patch, and it's been like that's really powered, and it takes time for people to work out how to like move things onto their strength. Maybe it have like the best Zen player, and it takes time for them to work out like how they can make that work the best, or if they can at all. Sometimes things don't align very well, and like that's unlucky for them. But most of the time, you can kind of like work out the best interpretation for your team. But that usually just takes time. I think the immediate results are just like what is naturally good, and that's just like who you have on the roster.
Sure. Now, I guess as a last question, I'm aware like that the APAC teams just got there, so it's probably hard to have a read on them. But generally speaking, you're certainly one of the favorites going in, just based on the season results and overall performance. It's also, I guess, many teams are saying like the fuel are very strong. Who do you think, generally speaking, will stand there, like, or has the highest chances to have one of those, grand final slots?
I think there's a bunch of teams that are all like really good chances of like doing well. I think like it's like 4 or 5, right? Like Fuel, Shock, us, Atlanta, and Seoul.
Okay.
And I think like those 5, I think we're the most likely. But who else is there? I'm not sure. I think it could be anyone. It kind of like it's almost like what's going to happen in the next couple of weeks, and like I think the meta will evolve, and like who works things out in those next 2 weeks will be the champion.
When you counted that list, in my mind, I was like, one of these is not like the others. And I would have expected Atlanta. I would have expected you to maybe say Shanghai instead. Why Atlanta?
I think Shanghai have at the start of the season, I would have probably included Shanghai in that list, but I think just over the course of the year they've struggled. They still have amazing players, so like they're always a little scary. Like maybe they can just like turn around. I just haven't seen that yet this year. I'm not really sure the reason why. And then Atlanta, like they just have like this really high talent level across their whole roster, and they always seem to like do really well in playoffs.
When I talked to Chris, he had high praise for Vigilante. Do you echo that?
Yeah, he was really good on Zen in the Zen Ana meta when Atlanta first picked him up. He kind of like changed things around for that team.
For sure. Do you have something in mind where you're like, okay, if the meta goes here, that team's probably most likely to win. If the meta goes there, we're golden. Do you have like something like that charted out?
Just like opponents wise, like I think each team has like a certain strength that we're trying to like anticipate of like how we have like our interpretation, and we're trying to think if one team that has this strength, and if it goes this way, like what can our answers be? Yeah, and each team has this strength, but they're not. I don't think anyone has this like dominant strength that like if the meta goes that way, that they are unbeatable.
In my mind, the way an average scrim week, especially an unknown metas goes, is like one team comes, or every team throws their best guess at what the meta comp is in there. And then eventually it consolidates around the best teams in terms of like whatever, like maybe someone figured something out. What I'm figuring out isn't working. I'm just, copy pasting, trying to do the best meta interpretation that I can feasibly support with my team. Is there something where it's very important to sort of dictate the meta flow? So if for instance, let's say I'm Dallas, I find something that suits me exceedingly well and I stomp scrims, that information carries through the scrim bucks metaverse, if you want. And therefore, people that maybe don't have as great of an idea start playing that comp as well. And therefore, I determine a meta that, generally speaking, is favorable to me.
Yeah, I think a lot of the teams, like the top teams, do dictate the meta in a certain way. Like at the start of meta, it's not necessarily the best thing to be like, okay, what is the best thing in the meta? Sometimes it's just better to be like, everyone in your team, go pick your best heroes, and then like that's the first step, and then like what doesn't work, what does work, and then go down that list. That way you have like some control about at least what is good for you. And that I think that's what every team does with like some kind of like eye on like what they internally think is going to be strong, while also trying to find what is going to be strong for them specifically. And then it becomes this thing of like iteration, like step by step iteration of like, okay, one team has their interpretation, we have ours, and like, oh, theirs is working better than ours. Do we have to go to that step, or can we make one little step on our thing, and then will that make it easier for us? And like bit by bit by bit, you kind of like work out as many answers as you can.
For sure. Now, this is, I believe, the second scrim day done after the APAC teams got here. What's your confidence level at right now?
My confidence level is always really high for our team, especially in playoffs. I think we've proven that like we are a team that will perform in playoffs, and yeah, I've high belief in our team.
How so stressful are the next couple of days are going to be? Because I was almost surprised that we are able to have this interview, right? In my mind, currently everyone's like chugging, their favorite energy drink, trying to find something, an edge over the others in the meta. Do you think that's overblown, and really everything that you've done across the season is now accumulating, and whatever you're doing now really doesn't move the needle that much?
I think it's just consistent with like everything that's happened in the past. Like you move the needle bit by bit. It's going to be like really like the closer you get to like the matches, it gets stressful by the day. But that's more of just like nothing is really changing in the game. It's still just the game, but the stress is there no matter what, and it's just something that you have to like acknowledge and like work through. I think, yeah, you can coaching is like specifically is like a strange thing that you can spend like endless time. Like if there was 48 hours in one day, you could spend every single minute doing something productive. But there comes to a point where it is diminishing returns. But I think that is usually like pretty far away from what you can actually do.
So generally speaking, what do you mean they're far away? Does that mean like you can probably work a lot until you hit those diminishing returns, or they set in very early?
No, I think you could. I think you could work a lot before you kind of like stop getting returns. Yeah.
Right. then we hope that these next couple of hours aren't going to, be overly stressful. And wish you the best of luck in the preparation, of course, in the playoffs. Thank you for the interview.
Thank you.